I spent 22 years measuring things. That was my work, geodetic surveying, which most people have never heard of. And when I explain it, they nod politely and then ask if I use GPS, as if the whole discipline collapsed into a phone app. My name is Marta Brzeziński, and I grew up in Wrocław in the southwest of Poland, in a city that has been German and Czech and Austrian and Soviet and Polish again. A city that understands better than most that the ground beneath you is not a fixed thing. Maybe that's why I found the work. Or maybe the work found me because I was already the kind of person who needed to know exactly where she stood. I moved to Edinburgh in 2001 to finish my doctoral research, and I never entirely went back. The work kept me, the Ordnance Survey contracts, then a position at Harriet Watt, then private consultancy for infrastructure projects across the Highlands. I drove a lot of empty roads. I spent a lot of mornings on hillsides with instruments that could measure a point on the Earth's surface to within 3 millimeters. 3 millimeters. The precision of it was the thing I loved. Not beauty, not mystery, precision. If you asked me to describe my spiritual life before any of this happened, I would have laughed and said something about how the geoid is complex enough without metaphysics. I was not an atheist aggressively. I was simply indifferent. The question of God seemed as urgent as the question of other intelligent civilizations. Possibly yes, functionally irrelevant. My mother was Catholic in the way that Poles of her generation were Catholic, identity as much as belief. I went to Mass at Christmas. I lit a candle for my father. These were correct social gestures. What I want you to know about my life before is this. I was competent. I was organized. I was respected by my colleagues and somewhat feared by my students. I ran 3 times a week along the Braid Hills path, and when I ran, I thought about work. The body running freed something in the mind that could then work. That was the only time I experienced anything that anyone might generously call transcendence. That loose, productive flow state on a cold hillside. That was my church. There was a woman I had been with for 6 years, a weef. That detail matters, and I'll come back to it. The thing I feared was not death. It was loss of precision, dementia, the slow erosion of the instrument, not dying, becoming approximate. It was a routine procedure. That phrase should be removed from medical language. There is no such thing. I had been having intermittent atrial fibrillation. I went into the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary on a Tuesday in November 2019. I had a site meeting in Argyll the following Thursday. I had a spreadsheet. The ablation itself went normally. What was not normal was what happened in the recovery suite 40 minutes later. My heart chose the wrong electrical pathway. I went into ventricular fibrillation. The alarm registered. The crash team was there in under a minute. AOEF told me all of this. AOEFA does not soften facts. What I know from inside is different. The pain stopped first, not gradually. It simply was not there anymore, as if a variable had been set to 0. Then the sound changed. Machines and voices had a kind of thickness, a medium they moved through, and then it didn't. And then I was not in my body. I didn't float above it. Spatial orientation simply ceased to be a structuring principle. I was somewhere, but somewhere was not organized the way somewhere usually is. What I perceived was a landscape made of information. Every fact has a weight, a density, a temperature. Significance had physical mass. Understanding had a texture. Dense clouds of it in some directions. Apertures, gaps where the density thinned and something else came through. The light was through the apertures. It was not illumination. It was more like the thing that illumination is a symptom of. The underlying condition, not the presentation. What it touched became fully itself. There was a presence, not a figure, not a voice, a quality of attention, the way you know someone is looking at you before you turn around, but vast, interested, just attending. I need to tell you what happened next, because it is the part I have the most trouble with. And the most trouble is where the most truth usually lives. I was shown something, an event that was not mine. I was in a kitchen in a city I have never visited. I know it was São Paulo because somehow I knew without being told. There was a woman, perhaps 60, washing dishes, and her daughter was at a table doing homework. The daughter asked a question, and the woman answered shortly, distracted. And I was inside the woman. I felt what she was carrying. the weight of a decision she had made 20 years earlier to stay in a marriage that was just wrong for her. She had stayed for the children, and she had done the right thing by every measure, and she had made herself approximate in the process. A margin of error she'd never have accepted professionally. And she didn't know that her daughter was watching her and learning that this was what women did, learned it from the specific quality of her mother's absence. I came out of it knowing something about the cost of competent self-management, how precision in external things can be a way of never having to be precise about internal things. Then something happened that I cannot move around with language, a reconciliation of scales, my 3mm accuracy versus the fact that the earth itself moves and breathes. And somehow this was not a problem. The motion was the point. The inaccuracy of any fixed frame was the point. The understanding was enormous, the size of everything. Then I became aware that there was a boundary, a place beyond which this attention could not continue in the same form. Continuing would mean not returning. It was geometry. I was not pulled back by light or a voice. What happened was this. A weef appeared in my mind as a fact. The fact of her. 6 years of Sundays. The way she read on the sofa with her feet tucked under her. I had never once simply been there without also doing something else. Without my laptop open. That Sunday was still open. Re-entry was a return to wait, as if gravity itself were a new sensation, like a survey point being assigned its coordinates, the click of becoming fixed in a frame. The frame was very loud and bright. A woman's face was very close to mine. I said very clearly, "The geoid is not a surface." Technically true and contextually insane. The 3 weeks after were the worst of my life, because I had been inside something with no edges, and I was now inside a flat in Morningside with edges everywhere, corners, right angles. I cried in the bath for reasons I couldn't explain to Aoif. I had never been a person who cried in baths. I had not been a person who cried much at all. My colleagues were politely skeptical. A friend said oxygen deprivation produces extraordinary neurological events. I said, I know the mechanisms. They do not touch what I'm telling you. The camera's engineering does not explain the photograph. I did sit on the sofa with Aoif, that first Sunday home. I put my laptop on the table and I left it there. She didn't say anything. She just shifted her feet slightly to make room. That small recalibration, the 6 centimeters of sofa, felt like the most precise thing in years. I still work. I still measure. Precision matters more now because I understand that measurement is not mastery, it is attention. The formal practice of paying attention. The mistake I made was thinking the measurement was the point. It isn't. The measurement is how you learn to attend. What you're attending to was there long before the instrument.